Hey everybody, it's Darlene. Welcome to my card video. This week I did kind of a different card with a shaped edge. And I started off with 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch sheet of black cardstock, which I adhered to a folded piece of cardstock. And then I took out my Stampin' Up! Edgelet. And I actually have the middle of the edgelet marked, so I marked the middle of the paper and then I just lined them up. And I used some Eclipse masking tape to hold it down while I ran it through my Sizzix machine. And so the machine just cut all 3 layers, the black and the 2 white layers. And then I just did the same thing on the other side. Next I took some pattern paper and I just lined it up along the edge and cut one side, and then I put it against the card so I would get a little bit of a mat, and then I marked with my pencil where to cut it along the edges so that I would get that same size mat on the other side. And I flipped it over and I traced around it with my pencil. Then I took my edgelet and I lined it up with it right at the top, which would leave a little bit of an area for the black to show through. That's how it worked. It's pretty simple. Okay, so I've got some Stampin' Up! Watercolor paper and my Provo Craft Colozzle, which I'm going to cut an oval out of. And actually, I wish I had Spellbinder's ovals because I would have used that instead. But I didn't have that, so I had to make do. Anyway, so it's really important to use the watercolor paper because I'm going to use a special technique with the Stampin' Up! Markers. So I have my fabulous Floret stamp set. I'm going to use some Memento Tuxedo Black ink. And I'm just going to have one flower. I'm going to stamp it at the top there. And then I'm going to get Pacific Point marker and a blender pen. Okay, I've slowed this down just a little bit. I'm going to color it just like I would with Copic markers. But I'm going to start with my darkest, you can think of it that way, where the shadow is. And then I take my blender pen and I blend that out. And remember, you have to use watercolor paper. Now I've got this little piece of scratch paper that I'm going to clean it off. And then I start spreading it out a little bit more. And then I clean it off and then I spread it out a little bit more. Now notice I never really go back to the dark area because that's just going to put a lot of ink on my blender pen. And I'm trying to get lighter and lighter. And so to do that, I wipe off the pen and then I start in a lighter area. So here I'm going to do another petal. So I'm going to color the darkest shadow areas with the actual marker. And then I'm going to come back in with my blender pen. I'm going to blend it out a little bit. And now my blender pen is full of ink, so I'm going to wash it off so that it's clear. And then I blend it out a little bit more so that it gets lighter. Again, taking off some ink. And then just blending it out. I kind of played with it back and forth a little bit, adding some more marker, blending it out a little bit until I got the look that I wanted. And so I'm going to do that for all the petals. And then I'm going to go back in with some Perfect Plum and my blender pen. I'm just going to color that middle part purple. Alright, so I freehanded with Garden Green a stem, and then I immediately regretted doing that. So I went back in with the blender pen. I'm not sure what I was planning to do here, but I actually used the thin edge of the marker, and I found out that when you use the thin edge of the Stampin' Up! Marker, it really doesn't blend out. You really have to use the brush tip. But I kept working on it, and I never really gave up hope. And then finally I went in with a Wild Wasabi marker. Which is just a little bit of a lighter shade of green. And again, it didn't blend, but at least it gave me a little bit more dimension. Alright, I'm using my Stamp-A-Majig because I want these leaves to be exactly perfectly aligned with my stem. And I'm using, again, Memento Tuxedo Black ink. Alright, I'm going to use the same exact technique on the leaves. And I'm going to be using Garden Green. Again, it's important, as I just found out, to use the brush tip and not the fine tip of the marker. So I'm just going to go through this process of spreading, cleaning off the blender pen, spreading out the ink again, and so on. Okay, now I'm gonna just create a border with the dotted lines. And then I'm gonna take actually a Copic marker. I'm gonna take C1 here and I'm gonna create a shadow. So it kind of gives a little bit even more perspective. And I do the C1 and then I actually take my colorless blender and I just blend it out a little bit so that it doesn't look like there's a gray line. So it kind of blends it into the paper. And my light is coming from the right hand side, so I'm really going to shadow the left petals. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the leaves as well. See, there's gray, and then there's my colorless blender. And then I went and colored just a little dark area where the leaf met the stem. Okay, so first I covered my black cardstock with the embossing buddy because that eliminates all of the stray white powder that you get sometimes on the black cardstock. And I'm going to use my decorative label punch, and then I'm going to actually cut off the edges, the top and the bottom, so I have a little bit of wave on the side. I didn't want it to be too big. Now I'm going to adhere all the pieces together. I'm going to pop this up with some foam dimensional adhesive. Since I already popped up the flower, I just put the dimensionals on the bottom portion of the sentiment. And that's it. Hope you enjoyed it. I do have another card on my blog that uses the same technique. If you want to check that out, you can check my post. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.